Commander Vex stared at the tactical display, his 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession. The war against the humans had been going. Well, catastrophically would be too kind a word. Disastrously? No, that didn't capture the sheer magnitude of their failures either. Sir, his aide, Lieutenant Crick, approached with that particular shade of purple that meant bad news. The Third Fleet has been compromised. Compromised? Vex's mandibles clicked together. Please, tell me you mean they've been delayed by space traffic. Not that a single human ship somehow managed to turn 50,000 of our warriors into cosmic dust. Crick's silence spoke volumes. Loud, embarrassing volumes. Oh, for the love of the 7 moons, Vex muttered. What happened this time? Did they accidentally challenge the humans to a fair fight again? The lieutenant's datapad trembled in his claws. Actually, sir, it was worse than that. They tried to board a human vessel called the Righteous Fury. Vex felt his stomach drop somewhere near his ankles. They boarded a ship with Righteous and Fury in the name? Did nobody think that might be a clue about what they were getting into? Apparently not, sir. The boarding party consisted of our finest warriors, 200 elite shock troopers, armed with plasma rifles, energy shields, and enough firepower to level a small moon. And? They encountered 17 humans. Vex waited. The silence stretched like taffy in a black hole. And? That's it, sir. 17 humans. The boarding party. Didn't make it back. The commander's head tentacles began twitching, which was never a good sign. Let me get this straight. 200 of our best warriors, equipped with weapons that could vaporize a building, were defeated by 17 humans. Technically, sir, it was 16 humans, and something they called a maintenance bot named Steve. A maintenance bot. Vex's voice was flatter than a pancake that had been run over by a freight train. Named Steve. Yes, sir. Apparently, Steve was very protective of the ship's coffee machine. This was it. This was how Vex's military career would end. Not in a blaze of glory, not in a heroic last stand, but because his species apparently couldn't figure out that humans were completely, utterly, magnificently insane. The communication array crackled to life, interrupting his existential crisis. Commander Vex, this is General Thane. I trust you have good news about the human situation? Vex glanced at Crick, who was now a fascinating shade of green that suggested he was considering whether jumping out the nearest airlock might be preferable to this conversation. Well, General, the situation with the humans is developing. Excellent. I assume our superior numbers and technology are finally showing results? Oh, absolutely, sir. Results are definitely being shown. Very educational results. There was a pause. Commander, you're using that tone again. The one that suggests our enemies are somehow defying the basic laws of military science. Would I do that, sir? You did it when the humans somehow convinced an entire battle cruiser to surrender by broadcasting what they called Rick-rolling at maximum volume for 72 hours straight. Vex winced at the memory. His cousin had been on that ship. Poor Zack still couldn't hear the first 3 notes of any song without breaking into uncontrollable shuddering. Sir, this is different. The humans have escalated. Escalated how, exactly? Vex looked at the tactical display again, where red warning lights were blinking like a disco ball having a seizure. They've deployed their secret weapon. What secret weapon? Our intelligence reports suggested they had exhausted their military resources. Yes, well, apparently our intelligence was slightly incomplete. Commander. Sir? What? Is their secret weapon? Vex took a deep breath, or the equivalent motion for his species. A single human, sir. Calls himself Marcus Blake. The silence on the other end of the communication was so profound that Vex briefly wondered if the connection had been severed. Finally, General Thane's voice returned, carefully controlled. A single human. Yes, sir. One individual has caused you to classify this as an escalation. Sir, this particular human has been problematic. Problematic how? Where did he even begin? Well, sir, yesterday he somehow infiltrated our maximum security detention facility, freed all the prisoners, convinced half our guards to join a chess club, and left behind a fruit basket with a note that said, "Thanks for the hospitality. 5 stars, would break out again." He thanked us? 5-star rating, sir. Apparently, our detention facilities have excellent Wi-Fi. General Thane's breathing was becoming audibly strained. Continue. The day before that, he single-handedly captured our forward observation post by challenging the entire garrison to what he called a dance-off. Our soldiers are still requesting music therapy. Dance-off? Yes, sir. Apparently, humans have weaponized rhythmic movement. Who knew? The sound coming through the communicator might have been laughter, or possibly the sound of the general's remaining sanity departing for an extended vacation. Commander Vex. Yes, sir? I'm sending you reinforcements. The entire 5th Battle Group is being redirected to your position. Sir, respectfully, I don't think more ships are the solution here. Why not? Because this Marcus Blake has made it clear he's not trying to defeat us militarily. He's trying to prove a point. What point? Vex pulled up the surveillance footage from their latest encounter with the human. The image showed a tall, lanky figure with an infuriating grin, wearing what appeared to be a jacket made from the fabric of space itself, casually sitting in the command chair of their captured dreadnought. Sir, I think he's trying to demonstrate that humans don't just win by fighting. They win by making their enemies question everything they thought they knew about warfare, physics, and reality in general. That's ridiculous. Is it, sir? Because right now, half our fleet is requesting transfers to desk jobs. Our psychological warfare division has filed for early retirement, and our weapons development team has started a support group. The tactical display updated with new information, and Vex's mood somehow managed to deteriorate further. Sir, we have a new development. What now? Marcus Blake has sent us a message. He says he wants to make a trade. A trade for what? Vex's mandibles clicked nervously. He says he has something that belongs to us, and he wants to return it in exchange for a conversation. What does he have? The Sword of Eternity. The silence that followed could have been weaponized. The Sword of Eternity wasn't just a ceremonial artifact, it was the symbol of ultimate authority in their civilization, lost 300 years ago when their homeworld had been attacked by interdimensional pirates. Every military leader, every politician, every citizen knew the legend. Whoever returned the sword would be granted any request, without question, without limitation. It was also completely impossible for a human to have found it, since it had been lost in a pocket dimension that had collapsed into a black hole. Sir? Vex ventured. How? General Thane's voice was barely a whisper. He didn't explain the how, sir. He just sent us a holographic image of himself holding it, along with coordinates for a meeting location. Where? The ruins of the old Colosseum on asteroid Gamma 7. That's in the middle of our territory. Yes, sir. He'll be completely surrounded by our forces. This has to be a trap. Probably, sir. But what, Commander? Vex looked at the image again. Marcus Blake wasn't just holding the Sword of Eternity. He was examining it with what appeared to be genuine reverence, turning it carefully in the light, as if he understood exactly what it meant to their people. "Sir, what if it isn't?" The communication array fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Not the silence of disbelief, but the silence of someone trying to process information that didn't fit into any known category. Commander Vex. "Sir? You're going to meet with this human." "Sir, respectfully, that sounds like an extremely bad idea." "Of course it's a bad idea. Everything involving humans is a bad idea. But if there's even the smallest possibility that he actually has the sword..." Vex understood. The Sword of Eternity wasn't just a symbol of authority. It was a symbol of hope. Their people had been fighting this war for 3 years, and they were losing badly. Not just losing battles, but losing their sense of who they were as a civilization. "What do you want me to offer him, sir?" "Whatever he wants, Commander. If he truly has the sword, if he's willing to return it, then we'll give him anything he asks for. And if it's a trap, then we'll finally have an excuse to use the antimatter bombs." The communication ended, leaving Vex staring at the tactical display and wondering how his life had reached the point where his best-case scenario involved negotiating with a human who had somehow acquired a legendary artifact from a collapsed dimension. Lieutenant Crick cleared his throat, which in their species sounded like someone trying to start an old engine. "Sir, the crew is asking about shore leave requests." "Shore leave? We're in the middle of a war zone." "Yes, sir. But apparently there's a rumor that Marcus Blake is opening a recreational facility on one of the nearby moons. Something called Cosmic Mini-Golf and Therapy Center. The crew thinks it sounds relaxing." Vex closed his eyes, all 4 of them, and tried to remember what his life had been like before humans had entered it. It seemed like a pleasant dream from a simpler time. Lieutenant Crick. "Yes, sir?" "Prepare my personal shuttle. We're going to meet this Marcus Blake." "Should I prepare an honor guard, sir?" "Number, prepare a medical team. I have a feeling we're going to need therapy after this." The shuttle bay was a hive of activity, as technicians prepared Vex's personal transport for what might very well be the most important diplomatic mission in their species' history, or the most elaborate suicide mission. At this point, the distinction seemed largely academic. Vex checked his equipment one final time. Standard diplomatic protocols called for ceremonial armor, formal weapons, and a complement of bodyguards. But nothing about this situation was standard, and he had a sneaking suspicion that showing up armed and armored would send exactly the wrong message to someone who had somehow acquired the most sacred artifact in their civilization. Instead, he wore simple robes and carried nothing more threatening than a translation device and his own stubborn determination to understand what Marcus Blake actually wanted. The flight to asteroid Gamma 7 took 3 hours, during which Vex had plenty of time to contemplate all the ways this could go wrong. The asteroid itself was unremarkable, just another chunk of rock in the void. But the ruins of the old Colosseum held significance for his people. It had been built during the height of their empire, a place where warriors from across the galaxy had come to prove their worth. Now it was a crumbling monument to better times, which seemed oddly appropriate for a meeting that might determine the future of the war. As his shuttle approached the landing coordinates, Vex could see another ship already docked near the ruins. It was smaller than he'd expected, and definitely human in design, but there was something about it that made his tactical instincts start sending warning signals. "Sir," his pilot announced, "we're being hailed by the human vessel." "Put it through." The communication screen flickered to life, revealing Marcus Blake's face. He looked exactly like the surveillance footage, except for his expression. Instead of the infuriating grin, he wore a look of serious concentration. "Commander Vex, I presume?" "That's correct. You requested this meeting, Mr. Blake." "I did indeed. I trust you came alone, as agreed." Vex glanced at his pilot, who shrugged. "I brought minimal support staff. Nothing that could be considered threatening." "Good. I appreciate that. This conversation is going to be difficult enough without adding unnecessary complications." The screen went dark, leaving Vex to wonder what exactly Marcus Blake meant by difficult. In his experience, humans use that word to describe everything from complex mathematical equations to explaining why they had decided to weaponize musical instruments. The shuttle touched down near the entrance to the Colosseum ruins, and Vex took a moment to center himself before stepping out into the asteroid's thin atmosphere. The gravity was lighter than he was used to, making each step feel strangely bouncy. Marcus Blake was waiting for him at the entrance, and for the first time, Vex got a good look at the human who had been single-handedly disrupting their military operations. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair that seemed to have its own opinion about which direction it should point. His clothes were practical rather than formal, but there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested hidden depths, and in his hands, catching the light from the distant star, was the Sword of Eternity. Vex had seen holographic reproductions, of course, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of seeing the actual artifact. It was beautiful in a way that transcended species, a perfect fusion of artistry and engineering that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. "Commander Vex," Marcus Blake said, inclining his head respectfully. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Blake, I have to ask, how did you acquire that sword?" Marcus looked down at the weapon in his hands, and his expression softened. "That's a long story, Commander, one that I think you deserve to hear in full. But first, shall we go inside? I think this conversation requires a more appropriate setting." They walked through the crumbling entrance of the Colosseum, their footsteps echoing in the ancient stone corridors. The main arena was still largely intact, and Marcus led them to the center of the circular space before stopping. "This place has history," he said, looking around at the weathered stone seats that rose up on all sides. "Your people built something magnificent here." "It was," Vex agreed. "Before the wars, before everything went wrong." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's why I wanted to meet here. Because this place represents what your civilization was capable of when it was at its best." He held up the Sword of Eternity, and the ancient arena seemed to hold its breath. "Commander, I need you to understand something. I didn't steal this sword. I didn't find it by accident. I was given it by someone who wanted me to return it to its rightful owners." "Given to you? By whom?" Marcus Blake's smile was sad and knowing. "By the last emperor of your people. Your great-great-grandfather, Commander. He's been waiting 300 years for someone to carry this message." The words hit Vex like a physical blow. His great-great-grandfather, Emperor Keth the Wise, had been lost with the sword when their homeworld fell. The idea that he might still be alive, somewhere in the collapsed pocket dimension, was impossible. But then again, everything about humans seemed to be impossible. "That's not possible," Vex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Commander, your ancestor wants you to know that the war you're fighting isn't the war you think it is. And the enemy you're facing isn't the enemy you need to defeat." Marcus Blake held out the Sword of Eternity, offering it to Vex with both hands. "He wants you to know that the real battle is just beginning." Vex stared at the offered sword, his mind racing through possibilities that each seemed more absurd than the last. The weight of 3 centuries pressed down on him as he slowly reached out to accept the blade. The moment his fingers touched the ancient metal, the world exploded into light. Visions flooded his consciousness. Emperor Keth the Wise, not dead, but trapped in a dimensional pocket, watching as reality folded around him. Years of solitude, studying the strange energies that had claimed their homeworld. And then, contact. A voice from across the void, speaking in a language that shouldn't exist. "Hello, Emperor. My name is Marcus Blake, and I think we need to talk." The vision faded, leaving Vex gasping in the arena's thin air. Marcus was watching him with patient concern, as if interdimensional psychic downloads were perfectly normal occurrences. "What did you see?" Marcus asked gently. "My ancestor. He's actually alive?" "Alive might be a strong word. Let's say he's persistent. Your people have a remarkable capacity for stubbornness, Commander. It apparently transcends dimensional barriers." Vex felt his legs give out, and he sat heavily on the ancient stone steps. "This is insane. Even by human standards, this is completely insane." "Oh, you haven't heard the insane part yet," Marcus said cheerfully, settling down beside him. "See, your great-great-grandfather has been studying those dimensional energies for 300 years. Turns out, they're not natural phenomena." "What do you mean?" "I mean, someone created the dimensional collapse that destroyed your homeworld. Someone with technology so advanced that your ancestors been calling them the architects because he can't pronounce their actual name." The pieces clicked together in Vex's mind, with the sound of a cosmic puzzle solving itself. The war with humanity. It's not random, is it? Marcus shook his head. "The architects have been manipulating galactic politics for millennia, Commander. They set up conflicts between emerging species, let them wear each other down, then move in to claim the resources. Earth and your homeworld are just the latest targets." "But why tell us this now? Why reveal yourself?" Marcus stood up and walked to the center of the arena, turning to face Vex with an expression that was equal parts determination and mischief. "Because, Commander, your ancestor figured out how to fight back, and he needs both our species working together to pull it off." "What kind of plan are we talking about?" "The kind that requires humans to do what we do best." "Which is?" Marcus grinned, and suddenly Vex understood why his fleets had been having such problems. Act completely unpredictably, while somehow making it work anyway. Before Vex could respond, alarms began blaring from his communicator. He activated the device to find Lieutenant Crick's panicked face filling the screen. "Commander, we have a massive energy signature appearing throughout the system. Unknown vessels are materializing everywhere." Marcus nodded grimly. "Right on schedule. The architects have been monitoring our little chat. They're not happy about Emperor Keth sharing family secrets." The first explosions lit up the asteroid's horizon as massive ships, unlike anything in Vex's experience, began engaging both human and alien fleets simultaneously. The vessels seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, their weapons causing reality itself to ripple. "Commander Vex," Marcus said, his voice carrying new authority, "I need you to make a choice. You can order your fleets to keep fighting humans, while these architects destroy everything we both care about. Or you can trust a lunatic human with a plan that probably shouldn't work, but definitely will." More explosions painted the sky in shades of destruction. Vex could see his own ships trying to coordinate with human vessels, both species realizing they faced an enemy that made their previous conflicts look like playground arguments. "What do you need me to do?" Marcus pulled out a device that looked suspiciously like a modified gaming controller. I need you to officially surrender your entire military to human command. What? Not permanently. Just long enough for me to implement your ancestors' plan. See? The architect's weakness is that they can't understand cooperation between species they've manipulated into fighting. Their whole strategy depends on us staying enemies. So, if we work together, we become something they literally cannot compute. Their technology will start making errors, their tactics will fall apart, and we'll have a window to strike back. Vex looked at the sword of eternity in his hands, then at the destruction spreading across their shared sky. You're asking me to trust the survival of my entire species to a plan that involves surrendering to the people we've been fighting for 3 years. Yes. And this plan came from my ancestor, who's been trapped in a pocket dimension, talking to a human through methods that shouldn't be scientifically possible. Also, yes. And you're implementing it with what appears to be a video game controller. Marcus held up the device proudly. Modified PlayStation controller, actually. Emperor Keth helped me adapt it to interface with architect technology. Turns out, interdimensional energy manipulation works a lot like combo moves in fighting games. An architect ship materialized directly above the Colosseum, its impossible geometry making Vex's eyes water. Energy began building in weapons arrays that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Commander, Marcus said urgently, I really need that surrender right about now. Vex activated his fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Commander Vex. By the authority granted to me by the Sword of Eternity, I hereby surrender all military forces to human command, effective immediately. The silence that followed was broken only by the whine of charging architect weapons. Sir, came General Thane's voice, did you just trust me, General, and follow whatever orders the humans give you? Marcus was already working with his controller, fingers dancing across buttons in patterns that seemed to create ripples in space-time. Emperor Keth, if you can hear me, now would be a great time for that dimensional resonance cascade you've been working on. The architect ship above them suddenly lurched, as if reality had developed a stutter. Similar disruptions began appearing throughout the system as human and alien ships, now working in perfect coordination, began executing maneuvers that should have been impossible. It's working, Vex breathed, watching as architect vessels began experiencing what could only be described as existential confusion. Of course it's working, Marcus said, not looking up from his controller. Humans have been preparing for this fight our entire evolutionary history. We just didn't know it. What do you mean? Think about it, Commander. Every story your species tells is about order, hierarchy, following proper procedures. Every story humans tell is about underdogs who win by breaking rules nobody knew existed. An architect battleship tried to target a joint human-alien formation only to have its weapons fire in completely wrong directions, as the cooperative tactics created interference patterns in their targeting systems. The architects created us to fight each other because conflict between similar species is predictable, Marcus continued, his fingers flying across the controller as he coordinated attacks across multiple dimensional planes. But cooperation between completely different species? That's chaos theory in action, and chaos is humanity's home turf. The battle was turning. Architect ships, designed to exploit the weaknesses of divided enemies, were being overwhelmed by tactics that their ancient intelligence couldn't process. Human creativity combined with alien discipline was producing strategies that existed in no military database. Commander Vex, came a new voice over the communication system speaking in perfect but antiquated dialect. "My descendant, it is good to speak with you at last." "Great-great-grandfather?" "The same, though I admit I'm not quite the man I used to be. Dimensional imprisonment does things to one's perspective." Emperor Keth's image materialized as a hologram, projected through Marcus's impossible controller. He looked exactly like the portraits Vex remembered from childhood, except for his eyes, which held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. "The plan is working beautifully," the Emperor continued. "The Architect's control systems are collapsing under the paradox of our alliance. They simply cannot accept that their manipulation has failed." "What happens now?" Vex asked. "Now, young commander, we finish what they started. Marcus, initiate the final phase." Marcus nodded, his expression becoming intensely focused. "Everyone hold on to something. This is going to get weird." He pressed a combination of buttons that created a sound like reality clearing its throat. Suddenly, every architect ship in the system began flickering between dimensions, their forms becoming unstable as the cooperative energy of the Human-Alien Alliance created feedback loops in their technology. "You see," Emperor Keth explained, as enemy vessels began vanishing one by one, "the Architect's greatest strength was their ability to remain hidden, to manipulate from the shadows. But cooperation creates light, Commander, and shadows cannot exist where there is light." The last Architect ship attempted to retreat into dimensional space, but Marcus was ready for it. A final button combination sent cascading energy waves through every dimensional plane, sealing the rifts the Architects had used to hide their presence. Silence fell over the system. Human and alien ships hung motionless in space, their crews trying to process what had just happened. "Is it over?" Vex asked. "This phase is over," Marcus confirmed, finally setting down his controller. "But now we have to figure out how to explain to both our governments that we just accidentally became the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy." Emperor Keth's hologram smiled. "That, my descendants, is a problem I will gladly leave to the living. Marcus, the dimensional barriers are stabilizing. I should be able to return to normal space within a few days. Looking forward to meeting you in person, Your Majesty." "The pleasure will be mine, young human. You have given me something I had thought lost forever." "What's that?" "Hope for the future." The hologram faded, leaving Marcus and Vex alone in the ancient arena. The sounds of celebration were beginning to filter through their communication systems as crews from both species realized they had not only survived, but won a victory that would reshape galactic politics. "So," Vex said eventually, "what happens now?" Marcus picked up his controller and began walking toward the arena exit. Now we have to explain to everyone why the war is over, why we're allies, and why the most sacred artifact of your civilization was recovered by a human with a gaming addiction. That's going to be a difficult conversation. Commander, after 3 years of fighting humans, I think you're ready for any conversation. They emerged from the Colosseum to find both their shuttle crews standing together, sharing what appeared to be coffee, and engaging in animated discussions about comparative military tactics. The sight was so unprecedented that Vex had to blink several times to make sure it was real. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I think this might actually work." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder with the casual familiarity that seemed to come naturally to humans. "Commander Vex, let me tell you something about my species. We specialize in making impossible things work. It's what we do. And if it doesn't work, then we'll figure out something even more impossible. It's also what we do." 6 months later, Vex stood on the observation deck of the joint human-alien space station they had constructed at the edge of known space. The architects' hidden bases had been discovered throughout the galaxy, their manipulations exposed, their victims freed from centuries of artificial conflict. Emperor Keth had indeed returned from dimensional exile, bringing with him knowledge that had revolutionized both human and alien science. The man was currently in the station's recreation center, teaching human children ancient games while learning to play something called video poker. "Commander," Marcus Blake said, approaching with 2 cups of that strange human beverage they called coffee. "The council meeting is ready to begin." Vex accepted the cup gratefully. He had developed a taste for the bitter liquid, much to his own surprise. "Any word from the outer territories?" 3 more species have requested membership in the Alliance. Apparently, word is spreading that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. "Who would have thought?" Marcus grinned, the same expression that had once been so infuriating and was now oddly comforting. "Humans, Commander. We would have thought. It's what we do." They walked together toward the council chambers, where representatives from dozens of species were gathering to plan their next move against the remaining architect strongholds. It was, Vex reflected, the kind of impossible alliance that his military training said should never work. Which, of course, was exactly why it was working perfectly. "Marcus," he said, as they reached the chamber doors. "Yes, Commander? When this is all over, when we've defeated the architects and established peace throughout the galaxy, what will humans do next?" Marcus paused, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Probably something even more impossible, Commander. After all, it's what you do," Vex finished. "Exactly. It's what we do." The doors opened before them, revealing a chamber filled with beings from across the galaxy, all working together toward a common goal. It was beautiful, chaotic, and completely impossible. In other words, it was perfectly human. And that, Vex thought as they entered the chamber, was exactly what the universe needed.